Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very exciting show today on the 27th day of April. Hey, April's almost gone. And last night was the Skilled Migration Seminar organized by Home Affairs and Migration Queensland, and of course facilitated by Culture Wares. And yours truly was the MC at the event. It was very well attended and a very well run seminar, and there was lots of interaction from the audience there as well. We'll bring you some of the clips maybe tomorrow because they still have to be downloaded, and it was good to see that the community raised. One of the good key things coming out of that was that Australia needs skilled people, and there are many pathways which can be taken into that, and so they were all discussed last night at that seminar, which was held at the BMEC, the Queensland Multicultural Centre. Well, right now let's move on, and we will look at that today as well in the migration system that's going to be reviewed very soon. And they talked about the reviews. There were some certain things that people pointed out, but the thing to understand was that Migration Queensland is a separate body to Home Affairs, and Home Affairs Queensland and Northern Territory is also under, then it comes under the federal one. So they implement the rules that have been put in place. They do not make the rules. Of course, the rules made federally at the parliament. They can make recommendations, but as we know, very soon reviews are going to be in place. Well, right now let's look at the news in brief and the headlines before we go into news in detail.
Soaring inflation has been laid bare in new ABS data showing Australians are paying 8% more for their groceries than this time last year. Milk and cheese prices have shot up almost 15% to multi-decade highs. Bread is up 12%, while fruit and veggies and meat prices have also continued their rise.
An overhaul of the Australian migration system has been recommended by a review labelling the system broken. The 7-month-long investigation warns the existing system is failing to address the nation's current or anticipated skilled labour needs.
The New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions has acknowledged new evidence suggesting the possibility of reasonable doubt over Kathleen Folbig's murder and manslaughter convictions for killing her 4 children. The 55-year-old is serving a 25-year sentence. A judicial inquiry has been told a rare gene mutation found in 2 of her babies may account for their sudden deaths, and medical conditions have been linked to the other 2.
Community service provider Anglicare says Australia's rental market is in crisis, with research finding less than 1% of listings were affordable on minimum wage. The organisation found not 1 was affordable for a single person on youth allowance, while just 4 was suitable for a person on job seeker.
News update and news in brief right now, looking at the news in detail. First of all, the migration system that needs review, and that's why we had this community consultation there in Brisbane last night.
This is the black soldier fly. Because we're in waste management and we want them to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, they do 5 times their own body weight every day.
Olympia Yaga is a bug farmer.
How good is it?
On the industrial outskirts of Canberra, her insects eat their way through tons of food waste from supermarkets and are then sold as stock feed.
We need to reclaim those resources, that water, those nutrients, and put them back into our agricultural supply chain.
It's highly specialised work, which has sent the company looking overseas for someone with insect farming expertise.
The commercialisation of insect farming is about 10 years old plus, maybe. And so you don't have a lot of people that are truly skilled at doing this.
Olympia found a highly qualified candidate, a South African who had worked for Fortune 500 companies but doesn't have a degree, which rules out common skilled visas. The firm is pursuing a so-called company-specific labour agreement, but that still wouldn't allow the staff member to bring his family over from South Africa.
How do I manage a staff member well when I can't give them any assurity that continuing down this process, we're almost a year in now, he will be able to bring his family here and start a life.
Insect farming might be niche, but speaks to a broader problem of getting and keeping a highly skilled worker in Australia. Our migration system now is overwhelmingly driven by what is ostensibly temporary skilled migration, which is in fact often neither temporary nor skilled. There are around 2 million people in Australia, that's 7% of the population, on temporary visas, compared with the annual permanent migration intake of around 200,000 people. That has implications for economic growth, the budget, the labour market and wages, and productivity.
Our migration system is broken. It's not delivering for Australians, it's not delivering for our businesses, and it's not delivering for migrants themselves.
A complex system of visas and a rigid skills list are just part of what is now widely recognised as a migration system that is unworkable, not just for would-be migrants, but for the country. Fixing a system which is now dominated by temporary visas must be at the heart of reform.
We've seen a shift away from permanent migration towards short-term, insecure, visa-based migration.
Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill commissioned a review of the migration system last year, headed by former senior bureaucrat Martin Parkinson. The review's final report is not due until later this year, but in a speech to the National Press Club tomorrow and in next month's budget, O'Neill is expected to set out major changes to our temporary migration system.
The single biggest problem facing our migration system today is that it's not giving our country the skills that we need. It is a horrendously complex system that makes it really hard to bring high-skilled workers into the country who will lift the productivity of everyone around them. But on the other hand, we have made it far too easy for companies to bring in workers who will work low-wage jobs and be very vulnerable to exploitation. So basically, we've got the whole thing back to front.
There's a lot of hurdles that employers have to jump through before they can sponsor people for permanent visas. There's a lot of uncertainty for skilled migrants that might apply off their own bat to come to Australia through the points test. And what those mean is that we're missing out on many highly skilled people.
If something goes wrong, if you're not being paid properly, if your job's unsafe, if you're being harassed, then you're concerned not just about losing your job, but being deported out of the country. That's a recipe for exploitation.
Submissions to the Parkinson Review by business groups also acknowledge the need to guard against migrant exploitation. In trying to address the low-wage job side of the problem, government, employers and unions seem united on the need to fix the so-called TSMIT, the Temporary Skilled Migration Income Threshold. It's the minimum income someone on a temporary skilled visa should earn, but it was frozen at $53,900 in 2013, which means it is now worth only 80% of what average Australians earn.
This is supposed to be a skilled program. Instead, it's increasingly attracting less skilled people to Australia, earning much below average wages.
Instead of seeing this system lift the productivity and lift the wages of Australians, we're seeing it have the opposite effect. So this is a really urgent problem that we need to fix for the country.
Then there is the question of how to make it easier for high-skilled workers to get into the country and stay here. Right now, the system is full of potential roadblocks and complexity. The skills list is so restrictive that more than 1,000 companies have had to resort to costly and time-consuming exemptions.
For employer-sponsored migration, skills lists are largely unnecessary. They have been introduced in the last 20 years. We had no specific skills list which said these skills are in and these skills are out. All skills above a minimum level were acceptable. Now, I think the government will probably go back to something similar to that.
There is broad agreement from business unions and the government that the skills list system doesn't work anymore.
It's archaic because it relies on a really detailed definition of occupations, and especially when we have something like the tech sector where the description of jobs changes really quickly. Basically, you write the list and it's out of date the next day.
But the big ticket item in what the government does immediately and in the longer term is how it shifts the migration system back to one centred on permanent rather than temporary migration. Many of the skilled workers we need who do come here, like nurses and doctors, find themselves in a permanently temporary world where they have to roll over their visas every 2 years, yet have no pathway to permanent residence.
One of the reasons our migration history has been so powerful, a force for good in our country, is because we have rooted that system in citizenship and permanency. Now, the way that our migration system has been managed of late hasn't focused on that. It's focused far too much on temporary workers and added to this increasing pool of people in our country who are trapped in a sort of limbo. They're permanently temporary.
The spectre of missing out on workers, crucial to our economy, highlights the risks we face if the system does not change.
We are in intense competition for people like nurses and teachers, etc., and that competition will intensify. And we need to think about that. We are not going to fill our shortages of nurses and teachers, shortages that will get worse even with even if the labour market weakens. So we have to be in competition for those people and understand that competition.
And this is what last night was all about, finding out about this. And this were all highlighted last night at the seminar as well. Well, right now on the next move, we go to the PBS SACAP on 320 medications.
Ashwarya needs this asthma inhaler to breathe easily. But the cost of medication for both her and her mum can be stifling.
They're quite expensive, especially my mum's medications.
Prescriptions that last 2 months instead of 1 will cut those costs and also mean fewer trips to the doctor.
It just saves me a lot of time. I don't have to go into a medical practice or find an appointment online. I don't have to explain myself so many times.
It'll free up what we call those low-value appointments, those ones that are just for scripts.
The changes will be phased in over 12 months from September, halving the cost of 325 drugs for conditions such as heart disease, diabetes and menopause.
For we think 6 million patients living with chronic disease at a time of enormous cost of living pressure.
But pharmacists say their businesses will wear the cost and some could close. They're also warning of medication shortages.
It will be pure luck when you walk into the pharmacy if you get your mental health medicine, if you get your medicine to manage your diabetes.
I really do caution people against taking advice from the pharmacy lobby group about supply arrangements.
Consumer advocates also doubt supplies will run short.
Medicine shortages are everyday business. There are a range of things already in place to manage that, and we've got months to get this right.
The government says the move will save more than $1 billion over 4 years, which it will reinvest in community pharmacies. Penny Timms, ABC News.
And I do, as I mentioned yesterday, that I do welcome that move, that is the need to go to a doctor so many times. So if you get 2 months supplies on the prescription rather than 1, that is great. But if you're looking at the problem of overdose, then maybe there must be that you do have the script, but you can only be dispensed 1 month at the time. When you're about to run out, you go back and get the rest. Things like that could be put in place, but it will save a lot of time and heartache. Many times we have found people. I have been in that situation where I've run out of medical and I just haven't had the time to go to the doctor or make an appointment to get the prescription. So these kind of things, that will probably help a lot. Well, right now, let's look at the budget and what the Treasurer says, what's going to it look like, and what about the vulnerable people.
Just looking this way, please.
Anthony Albanese soon to play hometown host in the Harbour City.
They're at the Sydney Opera House,
chairing a high-powered meeting of world leaders.
A chance for us to work cooperatively with the United States, Japan and India.
And, like last year when the Quad leaders met in Tokyo, global inflation caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine will be on the agenda.
Every advanced economy taking measures that could be seen as extraordinary.
The Albanese government keen to extend one such measure, a price cap on wholesale gas to be left in place until 2025.
With exemptions for major producers who make legally enforceable commitments on supply and price, and for smaller players supplying the domestic market.
This gives enormous discretion to the government about how they treat individual players in the industry.
The Treasurer adamant it's cost of living relief of the best kind, easing pressure on households while not further stoking inflation.
And then we've got Mari.
But Jim Chalmers is facing a concerted campaign to dig deeper, a fortnight out from the budget.
The first priority must be a substantial increase to JobSeeker.
4 Labor MPs backing calls for an increase to the unemployment benefit, youth allowance and some related payments.
I think it's really important that we actually enable people to live dignified, meaningful lives.
It is tough to live on the JobSeeker payment, and that's why we want to move as many people as we can off that payment and into good, secure, well-paid jobs.
Targeted cost of living relief is coming in the budget. Pensioners and some welfare recipients will receive help with their power bills, and the government appears poised to extend the single parent payment until their youngest child reaches high school. The Treasurer says he'll be prioritising the most vulnerable within the constraints of what's fiscally possible.
And that is a good move there by the Treasurer. That all these people who are on welfare recipients, if they can be sifted from there into good paying jobs, there goes that skill shortage that we were talking about. We have people here that can be trained to get into the workforce. So the human resources are here, but they are probably not being utilized in the right manner. So there needs to be some training and some incentives from government. One, to take them on board. Number two, to train them, to upskill them into the jobs that could become or aid towards the productivity of the country. Well, right now, Agent Search is underway for the Australian cruise passenger ship.
Got some breaking news now, and the US Coast Guard has just confirmed that an Australian is missing after going overboard from a cruise ship off Hawaii. Let's go straight to our North America correspondent, Barbara Miller. Barbara, what do we know?
Well, this incident happened on the Royal Caribbean's Quantum of the Seas cruise liner. Now, that's a vessel that left Brisbane a couple of weeks ago. We understand it was off Hawaii as this incident happened. An Australian man went overboard. That's according to the US Coast Guard. This incident first reported by 9 News, but the Coast Guard in Honolulu now confirming it. Now, what the Coast Guard says is that vessel stayed in the area for a couple of hours and assisted in that search effort. As they put it, they saturated the area, and then the cruise liner continued on its course. Now an aerial search is underway as C-130 Hercules is in the air circling that area looking for this Australian man. We have no further details on the incident, Michael, at this time, or any further details beyond that this is a male and an Australian. Some of the passengers on that ship posted photos and video of the search effort in the night. You really got a sense of just how difficult it would be to try and locate someone in the dark there in the middle of the ocean. Someone else suggesting there were also some medical emergencies on board. So clearly a very difficult time for the passengers on that cruise, and we're obviously trying to get further details as the morning progresses.
Yes, let's hope they find him, but as you say, that search is very challenging indeed. Barbara, thanks for the update.
And we really do hope for the well-being of the person, even though it may sound very, very unlikely at this point in time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a look at functions and events. Hey, well, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company this morning. At the moment, 21 degrees and mostly sunny, getting up to 25 later in the day. A glorious Brisbane day and a wonderful time of the year when it's not too hot, not too cold. It's getting a little bit on the cooler side, but it is not cold as yet. And of course, Brisbane weather is always just amazing. Well, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. We'll see you then.